and welcome back to Two Balding Nerds. I'm Kellen,
And I'm George.
and today we're going to be discussing the Book of Boba Fett finale, Episode 7, titled In the Name of Honor.
So, are you ready to eat words? Because I thought this episode kicked ass.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the opposite boat as you, George.
I just can't even begin to emphasize how much I was thrilled with the episode. So I cannot imagine how you can be disappointed with it. I would love to hear that.
Well, you know me, I'm a sucker for a good story, and I kind of felt like as much as this was, and I'll repeat what I said last week about the last couple of episodes, they've been great Star Wars episodes. There's been a lot of like fan payoffs, nerdgasm moments. But as far as the story, the overarching story for this show, I felt like it was kind of lacking, and I was a bit disappointed in that.
Okay, I think that's a fair point for the entire show, but I'm more so going like this episode. I feel like nailed it out of the park as okay. This was a exceedingly fun episode, and it had a fun pace to it. It was also an hour long, which I really enjoyed, and it also I can definitely say as far as overarching for just the Star Wars TV shows in general, it has definitely set up season 3 of the Mandalorian quite well with Grogu being back in the care of Mando. By the way, heavy spoilers in this.
Yeah, no doubt. You know what? I think you're right. I think my opinions for this episode are going to kind of bleed into whenever we end up doing our full series review on the show. But I will agree, this episode did have a fun pace to it. There was a lot of action. I feel like the story in this episode obviously was severely lacking. It was just an hour shoot 'em up, but there were some great payoffs, some great moments, and I mean overall, as a Star Wars entry, this was definitely a good one. I won't lie.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as far as story wise going in this episode, I feel like that extremely slow crawl that they had throughout the series was able to make it so that this last episode could be a big bang, bang, boom, beat 'em up kind of idea. And it didn't need much story, but it did supply just enough that I was like, okay, I know what's going on. And in all honesty, the best parts of the story were once again connected to Mando and Grogu. Whereas Boba Fett's story was like, yeah, no, I'm gonna kick their ass and just move along, which is like what I've been wanting Boba Fett to do this entire series.
Yeah, I'll agree. I feel that, obviously, as I mentioned before, I think Mando has kind of stolen Boba's thunder a little bit, but I felt
Agreed.
like it was really awesome to see the two of them fighting side by side, back to back kind of deal, just guns blazing and shooting down bad guys and that kind of thing. And the first time I watched it, I was thinking, like why aren't they, trying to fire from cover kind of thing. And the second time around, I watched it and I went, cover? Who needs cover when you have Beskar armor and you can sit there tanking hits left and right and still keep going? You know,
Yeah.
and I was like, that almost kind of makes the scene more badass that they're like willing to go out there and get blasted multiple times and still just keep mowing guys down.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I also can say the fact that they did the strategically smart move of jetpacking out of there and using the Twi'lek as the bait, essentially.
Yeah, he was a good diversion.
Yeah, and I'm like seeing them jet around was so much fun to see. And then, as you said, when they're flying around and shooting the missiles out of his knee pads, and then also using the missile on his back, using the missile in his wrist, using the what is Mando's called again?
I know what you're talking about. I think they were called like the Whistling Birds or something like that.
Yep, whistling birds. Yeah, him using the whistling birds, seeing them use their full arsenal in that fight was brilliant, in my opinion. And even when they brought out the dark saber to take down the droids, that was everything about it was fantastic. As far as just seeing the big action, which I feel like because of the fact that the rest of the series has been such a crawl, the action was definitely made up for it, and the little parts of the story that were there made it good enough. Once again, we will be discussing as a whole what we think of the series. And I think that is going to be I'll be a lot more critical overall because there was, I think, some serious flaws to the series. But overall, this episode where Boba was just being a badass, where I was like, that's all I've wanted to see the whole series was Boba being a badass. So thank you.
Yeah, I was kind of glad to see that he, found the controls to his jetpack. It was about time to see him fly around and actually use it in a sort of tactical manner, whereas before
Mhm.
he kind of just used it to show up, after the guy had already been caught, kind of thing. I enjoyed watching him finally find out that they were all backstabbing me or whatever. I called it, what was it, 4 episodes ago or 3 episodes ago when he held his little meeting And I said, you watch,
Yeah.
somebody's going to betray him. And it wasn't just somebody, it was literally every family that was like, nah, fuck this guy.
Yeah, no, that was yeah. I find it, once again, it's gonna have to be a discussion for the whole series where it's like Boba Fett got duped so many times, and it didn't help for his character for it just badassness because it was like okay, I guess in the end he won and he's now kind of respected by the people of the city. But then he even made that weird line at the end where he's like, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Like, dude, you just went through this whole thing. Don't say that.
Yeah, I know. It's like, what was the point of going through that whole exercise if you're now going to be like, oh, maybe I don't want this? Yeah, that was a little bit frustrating for me. And it's funny how they kind of made him out to be this like Robin Hood sort of type, and it's like, that's not really how he was kind of depicted in the past, you know. But it's
Mhm.
like we discussed a few episodes back. Like this is what it is. This is what we're getting now, and this is like we kind of have to accept it. Like there's no going back, sort of thing. Like this is
Yeah.
how he is now.
Yeah, Disney has decided this is the way that they're going with Boba Fett.
Yeah, and I mean, I get that. I like the anti-hero angle, but I don't know. He he was a little bit too goody goody for me in this series, and I felt like he needed to be a little bit more cold. And I know there was a part in the episode where Cad Bane's like, "See, I always knew you were a ruthless killer," and it's kind of like, well, he was kind of put in a position where it was his life or yours, and anybody put in that position is going to be a ruthless killer.
Also, it seemed that line kind of made me snicker too because I was like, "See, I always knew you're a ruthless killer." Gee, what tipped you off? The 50 other people I just killed? Like,
There was one facet of that episode there where they sort of made a nod to Clone Wars fans, but anybody who's a casual fan watching this is not going to understand the whole dynamic that Boba and Cad Bane actually have. How Cad Bane actually kind of mentored Boba as he was a younger man.
yeah, I was going to mention that too, but yeah, it was nice that they made that call out. I was actually really surprised that they killed him off because I thought they were going to continue him on for a little while in the series or in going forward in series.
Yeah, that was like kind of my first knee jerk reaction when they killed him. I went, oh, okay, so that happened, and I thought to myself, well, there's going to be a lot of pissed off nerds tomorrow. Cad Bane has quite the following, and a lot of people that love the characters. So I was
hmm
like very genuinely shocked that they decided to bring him into live action, which people have been calling for years, and then kill him off the next episode after about 15 minutes of screen time. I went, oh, okay.
Yeah, it seemed like majority of Star Wars's villains, with the exception of Sidious and Vader, maybe Kylo, usually get like one, maybe two scenes in a movie, and then they're killed off. Like I can't think of any Star Wars villain who has lasted more than two of the movies, other than the three I just mentioned. So Vader, Sidious, and Kylo Ren.
Well, Dooku was around for a little bit, and then he was
No,
all over the Clone Wars.
he was only in it for two movies, but then he was a lot in the TV show. So like all the villains only last for either two movies, and then they get like this absurdly long amount of time in the TV shows. So Darth Maul had one movie and he had a certain amount of time in the TV shows. Then Dooku, like I said, Clone Wars, ton of time in the Clone Wars, but only two movies. And even if you think about it, Revenge of the Sith, he was barely in it. He literally was there to be like, "Hi, my head's off, bye." And yeah, Grand Moff Tarkin, he got killed in the first movie. You could technically put him in two with Rogue One, and it's kind of funny how they do that with all the villains, where it's like, oh, cool, we got Bane in the TV show, and he's dead.
Yeah, it's kind of like in South Park. So we invested your money into this mutual fund, and it's gone.
Yeah, pretty much.
Kind of how it feels a lot of times with. I mean, it's not just Star Wars; it's a lot of different properties. Villains don't seem to last very long, and I mean, realistically, that's because they want new and interesting stories and different villains for the good guy to fight, right? So you can't
Mhm.
always have the same villain, otherwise it gets a little bit boring that they keep getting away and all that kind of stuff. So that's fair.
Fair.
But I was definitely glad to see that they paid off the Rancor, and I was watching it and
Yes.
going, George is probably going to be losing it on his couch right now, watching the Rancor go around and just like destroy everything.
Yeah, no, I was full blown clapping, going like, "Yep, childhood dream hit just came true. Boba Fett is riding a Rancor and shooting people from the Rancor," and I literally yelled about three times at the screen where I was like, eat him!" And then finally the Rancor ate one of the pikes. I was just like, "Yes!"
That's kind of where I was at too. I was thinking, when is it going to eat somebody? Like, that's what I want to see. And I was quite surprised that, honestly, I thought the Rancor showing up was, I don't know, I just didn't have high expectations. And I mean, I think that's a good thing because I was quite surprised by how well it was done and how much I actually enjoyed it. even though the Rancor was around for quite a bit, it didn't even feel like it was. You know how sometimes they kind of drag stuff out, and you're like, all right, like this was cool, and now it's like it's not as crazy anymore because you kind of passed that threshold where it was cool. I
Mhm.
felt like the whole time it was quite enjoyable to see the Rancor on screen, and I think it's just because we got so little of it in the OT. It's like we were kind of introduced to it, and again, same thing as a villain philosophy we were talking about before, and it's like here it is, this is cool, and it's gone before we have a
Mhm.
real chance to sort of like digest what we just saw, right? So I thought that was awesome, and Grogu putting him down was even better.
Yes. The thing that I found that made this episode so much better than the other episodes is they made build up for certain things that happened in this episode, and not only do they all pay off, they paid it off so well. So like they did with Grogu showing up wearing the Mandalorian armor. They don't need to say like, oh, a message was sent from Luke that he has chosen to be with the Mandalorian. Because that was already set up in the previous episode, we knew that that was the choice he made, and we're just so happy that he made that choice. The fact that the Rancor was set up, and I even have to say, because of the 2 episodes without Boba Fett, where it's like, yeah, he made that comment about the Rancor, they better pay it off. And for me, I was just looking forward to the thought of him like just riding it down the street like a boss. Instead, it shows up and it kicks ass. So I was like, oh, my expectations were really low on the Rancor, and they went way above what I was expecting. And then Grogu putting it to sleep, seeing Mando fight the Rancor, even the comedy in it where Mando got his head bitten by the Rancor, and they were like, oh, okay, maybe he doesn't have a plan this time.
Yeah, I don't know what he was thinking, man. Going up against that Rancor, I would have been like, I would have just tried to corral it and get its attention and try and get Boba Fett back to it because clearly he has a bond with it and he could have probably like calmed it down or whatever. What did you think when you first saw Grogu show up in the X-wing? What were you thinking when that happened?
I was like, holy crap, Grogu stole an X-wing?
Yeah, that was kind of my first knee-jerk reaction too. Was I was like, dude, he just hijacked Luke's X-wing and flew to Tatooine to be with Mando.
I think that's one way to get kicked out of the Jedi Academy.
Right? And I mean, at first, I saw the X-wing, I saw R2, and I'm like, okay. Star Wars Theory had actually theorized that Luke was going to show up and kind of just like save the day and mow everybody down and all that kind of stuff. So I thought, man, does he have an inside track or something? Because his theories always seem to pan out. And I thought it was Luke, and then of course it's Grogu, and I was like, oh, dude, he just like hijacked Luke's X-wing.
And I also can say I'm super happy that Luke did not show up because I just don't want it to
Yeah,
be every single series ends with and Luke Skywalker swings in to save the day and
yeah.
kind of lack of better word. One of the problems that Star Wars I think has had is like, oh, and then the Force saves the day, and it's like, well, technically we had that moment where Grogu quelled the Rancor, but that wasn't him saving the day for everyone. It was just that one spot where he did make a little bit of a change, or he had his little moment, I would say, almost there. And it was good because it wasn't like Grogu with the Force somehow solved all of Boba Fett's problems. Boba Fett and the rest of his team solved Boba Fett's problems. Grogu solved one problem, which was Rancor needs to go to sleep now.
Well, he did also pull that part out of the what do they call it, a Serpanoc
Oh yeah, right.
battle
He did.
droid or whatever. He pulled that part out of it, which kind of crippled it long enough for Boba Fett to show up on the Rancor and just like absolutely trash it.
That one was to save Mando Daddy, so
Yeah, of
that was
course. It's always a save Mando Daddy.
exactly that Mando would be dead quite since season 1, episode 2, if it weren't for Grogu at this point.
Yeah. There's one thing that I can say for certain about Grogu. I will never get tired of seeing Grogu on screen. I don't care how long they keep his character around. I will always watch if Grogu's in Star Wars.
Yeah, no, I literally feel like the reason why they did the last now 3 episodes of Book of Boba Fett the way they did them is just because they were like, okay, we need to do Mando season 3. We need Grogu in the series. We can't do it without him. So let's find a way for him to leave the Jedi Order so he doesn't get killed by Kylo.
One of the things that I really enjoyed about that episode too was right at the end there when he starts tapping on the glass, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like,
Yes.
what does he want? He's tapping on the glass for a reason. And then he kept saying no. And then when he tapped really hard, I'm like, oh, he probably wants him to use the sublight. And as I'm saying that to myself, he wants to use the sublight thrusters. Dan's like, all right, fine. He goes to hit it, and I was like, yes.
Yes, exactly. It's like, okay, and season 3 is set up, and I cannot wait for season 3 of Mando. So if anything, Boba Fett's last episode has completely cemented once again why we love Mando and can't wait for the next season.
I would say though, with this show in the state that it was, if they were to say, "Hey guys, we're gonna do a season 2," would you be interested, or would you be kind of thinking, "Well, the first season didn't really accomplish much in terms of like the story of Boba Fett"?
I think both of those things. The first season did not accomplish much in terms of Boba Fett. However, I would say, considering the fact that how much I had fun, especially on the last episode, and just in general being like, okay, I'm interested to see where the story goes. If they go, hey, we're doing another season of Book of Boba Fett, I go cautiously. I'm worried that you might drag this out and make it really bad. But if you can deliver a good story again, or not so much a good story, but if you can deliver good, fun Star Wars, and you just keep on saying whenever you're kind of lost on whose story it is, you just go, it's Boba Fett's. Yeah, I could watch another season, but I'm not going like, oh, like I need to take a day off work so that I can see Mandalorian season 3, episode 1 kind of idea. That one I'm like hardwired, super excited for. Boba Fett, I'd be like, oh, okay, if you're doing another one, I guess I'll watch it, but not sure why that one.
Yeah, that's kind of my reaction too. Is it's a little bit lukewarm. You know, if they were to say, "Hey, we're going to do a season 2, and we're actually going to focus the story on Boba Fett, and it's going to be all about him. There's not going to be a bunch of interruptions and this, that, and the next thing," I'd probably be game for it. But right now, I'm just kind of thinking, it was fun and it was entertaining. But as far as like what we got for Boba's story, I wasn't overly impressed. But with that being said, as far as this episode goes, if you were to rate this one out of 10, just based off of, your pure enjoyment of it, what would you give it?
Ooh, that's tricky. If you're saying just on pure enjoyment,
Yeah, because earlier you were like, this story on or this episode on its own was good, and so I kind of wanted to see how you felt because like we discussed before, we're gonna do a full review, so we can kind of break down the series as a whole and what we would give the series as a whole out of 10. But as far as this episode goes, how did you like it out of 10?
Okay, I find that a little tricky to answer because if we go by pure enjoyment, all 3 of the last episodes that we just saw, so of Book of Boba Fett, I give a 10 out of 10. But as if you watch the other episodes, you'll see I think I gave the episode 4 9 out of 10, and then episode 5 an 8 out, or sorry, 6 and 8 out of 10, and so forth. On pure enjoyment, easily a 10 out of 10. On actually like just saying, hi, how was the episode? I give it still a good 9 out of 10, just because yeah, there was a little bit of story lacking as far as the episode goes, but that is easily compensated for the fact that there was so much slow story in the earlier part of the series that I go, okay, I'm willing to forgive because they delivered on so many fun things with just seeing all the fights, seeing the Rancor, seeing Grogu do his thing, seeing Mando and Boba being just badasses. And I'd say, you know what? As a finale, as a final episode of the series, that was a 10 out of 10. That was good Star Wars. That was fun.
I'm not quite in the same boat. I know I'm a little bit more critical than some people are, but as far as that episode goes, you know what? I would give that one a solid 7 out of 10. The action of it was quite enjoyable. The first time I watched it, I was kind of not really loving it all that much, but the second time around, it grew on me a little bit more. The
Mm.
pacing, like you mentioned before, was very good. There wasn't ever like sort of a dull moment in that episode. There was a few things that I would have maybe done a little bit differently, and of course the plot twist, if you want to call it that, of the families turning on him. I mean, you could see that coming from a mile away. That was not a surprise, I think, to anybody but Boba Fett himself. And at the very end, my nitpick would be when Fennec Shand went and dispatched with the leader of the Pyke Syndicate and the mayor and all those people. I felt like
Yeah.
I felt like that payoff needed to come from Boba Fett rather than Fennec Shand. Don't get me wrong, I love Fennec. She's awesome, and I think at this point I would probably say she deserves her own show. I
Mm.
feel like there's probably enough that they could work with there, especially because Fennec Shand has shown up in the Bad Batch, right?
Mhm.
So there might be a story arc there that they can kind of explore that leads up to the point where she was in the Mandalorian, where she gets shot and all that kind of stuff, and then you have a little bit of that, like that bridge of what happened in the meantime. I feel like they could do something there, and I would probably watch that. And I mean, her character is kind of like what we were wanting out of Boba Fett. She's kind of cold and ruthless, and shoots
Mhm.
first, questions later kind of deal. So yeah, I would definitely give this episode a 7 out of 10. It could have been a 10 out of 10 for me if there was a little bit more closure, so to speak, in terms of this series, and I just felt like there wasn't enough there story wise to kind of justify having this whole story arc. I feel like this could
Mhm.
have been the Mandalorian season 3 or something like that, you know?
Mm. Yeah, Mandalorian season 3 cut out all the flashbacks kind of idea and
Yeah.
just have little blurps of being like, meanwhile on Tatooine and show kind of Boba Fett doing his thing. I think that's a very good point. It could have been. I think that could have worked probably a little bit better.
You know how like some TV shows have like a mini arc, a mini story arc within a
Mhm.
season? I feel
Yeah.
like this was like a mini story arc within the season of Mandalorian season 3. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like Mando's out on a mission, and then like he has to, and then he gets called to Tatooine, like he did in that episode, right? And to get his ship and all that kind of stuff, and then Fennec Shan shows up, and then it's kind of like there's the mini arc, and then there's the 2 episodes or whatever where he does the battle with the Pikes and everything, and then it's like all right, and we're off to the next adventure kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Well, until next time, we will we'll keep you guys abreast of all of the latest Star Wars material that's coming out. I think next up on the docket for Disney Plus is the Kenobi show, which actually today
Great.
they announced a release date for the first episode of the Kenobi show, which is going to be May 25th of this year, 2022. So be on the lookout for that.
Can they ever just actually do these things on May the 4th? Like, come on.
I think there was a rumor going around that it was going to be May the 4th, because I'm just looking at my calendar right now, and guess what? The Disney Plus shows have been airing on Wednesdays. May the 4th is a Wednesday. So people were theorizing that that was going to be the case, but I think the reason why they stayed away from doing that was because I think Doctor Strange, The Multiverse of Madness is supposed to come out on the 6th, and a couple other things are supposed to come out around that time. So I think they delayed it a little bit so that Kenobi would have sort of a premiere day where there wasn't going to be any sort of competition, so that way they would get as many viewers as possible.
Makes sense.
Alrighty, folks. Thank you for watching.
And please make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to add your voice to the conversation, please comment in the comment section below. We'd love to hear what you think of the episode, and tune in next time for when we discuss the whole series.
Until next time.
This is the way.